got the call saying that the MRI showed that I had a brain tumor, and it was pushing on my optic nerve. And at that point, it was the size of a softball.
Job Insights, a podcast to help you carve out your career pathway and enhance the opportunities for gainful employment.
It was a long time where it was very hard. You know, you're angry and upset and you don't understand. Now I can look back, but that's certainly a process. You know, it's not something you can just be at that point. And I think that's how a lot of things in life are.
To help you navigate the employment world and give you job insights and enhance the opportunities to choose the career you want.
But in middle school, you're really not, for me, I just wanted to be quote unquote normal.
And you can find the Job Insights podcast on blindabilities.com, part of the Blind Abilities Network, with hosts Serina, Gilbert, and myself, Jeff Thompson. And you can contact us by email at jobinsights@blindabilities.com. Leave us some feedback or suggest some topics that we cover on Twitter at JobInsightsVIP. And check out the Job Insights support group on Facebook, where you can learn, share, advise, and interact with the Job Insights community.
Going back to your home, but small city, and just having all of that independence just taken away is very difficult. I mean, I'm definitely not super tech savvy, so I don't half the stuff that's out there I don't even really know about, which is super sad.
Oh, just keep listening to the Blind Abilities Network. You'll learn all kinds of new stuff. Shameless plug there, sorry.
Then I've gotten to do some coding using different JavaScript and HTML and CSS and just different things like that. So it's so cool because it's such a variety of different things. I love it all. So it's been great.
Whoa, let's back up here, Emily. You were just saying that
I'm
you're low
confused.
tech. Low tech, and now she's coding and going into
JavaScript.
Learn about resources for training, education, and employment opportunities.
Just many difficult things to get through, but you work through each one, and yeah.
And now please welcome Serina, Gilbert, and Jeff Thompson with Job Insights. How are you doing, Serina?
I'm great, Jeff. I am really excited. Today we have a special guest with us. Her name is Emily Zimmermann, and I met her at a conference that I attended here in Colorado, and she shared an amazing story of her journey from the first diagnosis that she received all the way through finishing college here at Metro State University. And I thought it'd be a great idea for us to hear from her and have her share her journey with our listeners.
Great.
So welcome to the podcast, Emily.
I thank you all so much for having me here tonight, and I'm just very excited to be a part and to be able to share some of my story.
Well, we are definitely excited to have you.
Yes, we are. Nice to meet you, Emily.
Nice to meet you all.
So I guess the best place to start, and I was just fascinated by your story, Emily. You did such a fantastic job over at that conference, and you captivated me from the moment you started talking. Like, I don't know if you realize this, but there was not anyone in the room that was like playing on their phone or doing something else. They were all like super into your story, because I know that you have a different type of story than most individuals that are in our field in regards to when your vision impairment began to onset. Do you want to start?
Right. So I had grown up living a very typical childhood. And then when I entered high school, I went to a small public high school, and I never had any vision problems or medical issues. But I started to have trouble seeing the board in my classes. So my dad and sister both had glasses, of course. We thought I just needed, glasses of some kind. So I went to the eye doctor, and they did tons of tests, one of which I can distinctly remember because I was looking at those, famous eye charts that we all know so well. And with one of my eyes, I couldn't read the big E on the eye chart. And after growing up, always having perfect vision, it was quite a shock. But then the worst part was the eye doctor said there's nothing he could do to correct my vision with glasses. So then we go to an eye specialist, and, I'm beginning to get a little more concerned because I just thought I needed glasses, which didn't thrill me. And now I'm finding out they can't fix it with glasses. So several visits to the eye specialist, many tests. And he finally said, I don't think we'll find anything, but we have to start ruling some things out. And so he suggested getting an MRI done. at that point I was 14, and an MRI is a huge machine, super, super loud. And it was so scary. And we actually got one. It was the last one of the day. They were actually just getting ready to close. And on the way home that night, we got the call saying that the MRI showed that I had a brain tumor. And it was pushing on my optic nerve. And it was a 1 in a million tumor. And at that point, it was the size of a softball. So it was going to require several surgeries. So, again, it was a complete shock and a huge adjustment to go from thinking life's all normal and then all of a sudden it's not. So the first 2 surgeries, I actually came out seeing better than I had going in. There were many side effects to deal with, but they were things, we could deal with. We could handle. We were working through them. We were just getting through it. Then over the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, the tumor grew back. And the doctor believed after the second surgery that he had had it all. They're not sure if there was maybe a small piece left. They're not sure if it was a new tumor that grew. They don't know, and ultimately it doesn't matter. But the third surgery, the possibility that was always there, happened. And I came out of the operation unable to see. The doctors and surgeons talked to my parents, and even though it was incredibly risky, they asked about going in a 4th time, just 2 days later, to try to repair my vision. And they did go in a 4th time, but it was too late, and the damage was permanent. Now, on top of having to recover from 2 back-to-back brain surgeries, I'm having to start to relearn how to live life. I mean, completely relearn how to live life. I mean, I can very vaguely remember, nurses and people coming into the hospital room, showing me basics of, how to eat and orient myself with the food on my plate. And, things that seem so elementary to us. But here I was at, 16 years old, and I needed to relearn all these things. And then going back to school was a whole new thing. And again, I had to relearn how to read using Braille, and I had to relearn how to, get around with a cane and all of those things, which was incredibly difficult. And yes, we can't change the situation we're in. We can't change the situation we're given. But it's wonderful having had to been able to see colors and see things. But the transition was very, very hard.
Now, Emily, you mentioned that you went back to school. So did you go back to the same high school that you were at prior to the diagnosis?
I did, yes. I grew up in a small city, so they didn't have a ton of options to begin with. And while I could have, I suppose, gone to they had a school for the blind in Columbia, which would have been an hour and a half away or something like that. At that point, we didn't really think about or consider, me going away during the weeks and stuff like that. So we made it work.
Emily, with all this happening so suddenly and so tragically, where did you find the drive to move forward? And where did you get that information to find a pathway forward?
Honestly, for me, a big part of it is I have a strong faith. So my faith is a big part of what helped me, just get through. But like you're saying, there was also I had a huge support system. Even though it was a very small city, I did know from actually my church, a visually impaired lady who gave me information on the National Federation for the Blind and the chapter for the area, and just the community gathering around me, and then closer knit community with people like that just was a huge help. Besides, like I said, my faith was a tremendous help.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question for you, Emily, before we move past your high school kind of days.
Yeah.
Did you find that your close friends treated you any differently, or were they pretty supportive? Because sometimes that transition can be difficult, not only for the individual experiencing the sudden loss of vision, but also those around that person.
Yes. So I'm going to say it was difficult for them as well because they were not there. They just were not supportive at all. And every one of my quote unquote friends left. And that also made just the transition and everything about it very difficult. And, it was a long time where it was very hard and very, you're angry and upset and you don't understand. Now I can look back and think, if that's how they are, I'm better off without them. But that's certainly a process. It's not something you can just be at that point. And I think that's how a lot of things in life are. Yeah, they were unfortunately not supportive.
Emily, was there a sense of loss? And I'm not talking about just a loss of vision, but a loss of identity, who you were, and how you would define yourself at that time?
Very, very much so. Just because everything I knew was different, to some extent, not because I didn't think I could do it, but because that desire was gone, but all of my, dreams were gone because they just had all changed. So I think very much so there was that feeling and that loss at first. But, you refine yourself in different ways. And you have to believe that those different ways are just, what's supposed to be.
Do you have any key turning points that you remember?
Well, one key for sure, I lost my vision as a sophomore in high school. And then after high school, I knew I needed some training. And that's when I came out to Colorado from South Carolina to the Colorado Center for the Blind. And I was out there 1 year at the training program they have because I just had so much I needed to learn. I was learning things in school, but it was just a half hour each day or something. So being in the intense training program was a huge help. And at the same time, it was obviously incredibly difficult. I think that was just one of the huge points where extremely difficult, but totally paid off in the end.
You mentioned that you had someone from your hometown that was visually impaired and she gave you some information. What was it like when you went to the Colorado Center for the Blind and found so many other students, so many other people that had blindness as well?
It was honestly very different. It wasn't obviously bad or good or anything like that. It was just different for me because being in a small town, there was just so little of that and just so few of us. I know when I went out, I was stared at, and obviously probably still am to some extent today. But we were just a very, very, very minority there. The two of us probably were 2 out of maybe 10 in the whole city limits, all that area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big stretch.
So when you got to Colorado, that must have been a big change when you had so many people.
Exactly. So when I got to Colorado, and then like you said, we're surrounded by them at the Colorado Center for the Blind, it was just a huge change. And not good or bad, it was just a huge change.
Did you find any role models?
Definitely. And just different things in different people, because some people were extremely just adventurous in their traveling, whereas other people just amazing in their cooking. So I totally had role models just with different skills and abilities, which was great. I liked that a lot.
Emily, what was the hardest part about transitioning to the Colorado Center for the Blind?
Ooh, the hardest part. I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. But I think the fact that for your own good, they push you so hard, but then if you break, they're not necessarily gonna be there to help wipe your tears. You know what I mean? The pushing had to happen, and I understand that, but I never felt necessarily, I don't know how else to put it, but it was just a very tough program. But I think the toughness of it is what helped build the character,
I can understand exactly where you come from. I taught at Blind Incorporated. I taught woodworking, and I was a student there at one time. And I think you start to identify with some of the instructors or some of the other people, and you find your own comfort zone within the confines of the camp, the training center.
Yeah.
Kind of like after hours when everyone goes back to the apartments and stuff, you start finding your own little group or comfort zone.
Yeah.
Serina, you haven't been to a training center, have you?
I have not. So, Emily, to give you a little bit of background on myself, I have retinitis pigmentosa. So I've had that, I guess, throughout my whole life. But I really didn't start receiving blindness-specific services until probably was like middle school, I want to say. But in middle school, you're really not, for me, I just wanted to be quote unquote normal. Like I didn't want a special lock on my locker. I'd rather struggle and put the wrong code in 3 times before I do it myself. Yeah. I didn't want to walk around with a cane. I did not want to feel different. Middle school is awkward enough without adding, oh, this girl has a white cane too, on top of everything, you know? I really didn't embrace truly like using blindness specific tools and learning screen readers and things like that until I was actually a sophomore in college. And that was more, because I still have some usable vision. And back then I had enough where I could even read regular print. It just took me forever. But in college, that doesn't cut it. So I finally realized like I got a sample of JAWS and taught myself how to use it. And all of a sudden it was like, well, holy cow, this is way faster than struggling for an hour to read 1 chapter. And that's when I really started embracing using the cane and using some more blindness specific tools. They did offer me the opportunity to do a residential type of program, but at the time I had commitments with college and I had a part-time job, so I could not be gone for that long.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference between so many people. It depends on where they are in life when it comes to a training type of center, especially residential, especially where you're living. And, you know, you traveled all the way from, South Carolina?
Yeah.
To Colorado. Now, how was that process when you decided you wanted to leave South Carolina to go to there? You must have went through your Voc Rehab to get authorized.
Yes, and it honestly all went very smoothly. They were a huge part of the transition. They were the ones who recommended coming out to the Colorado Center for the Blind. And then when I decided I wanted to stay, they were totally helpful in the transition process. So it was honestly a very good transition.
Oh, that's great, because some people really find it a real stickler to get them to override, being sent to somewhere within their state or someplace close and stuff. So that's great that you had that opportunity and took advantage of it.
I am curious though, Emily, how was that transition for your mom?
Well, she actually writes about some of it. She has a book that she titled She's 1 in a Million, because the brain tumor I had was a 1 in a million brain tumor. So she writes about some of those transitions in the book, but I know it was very difficult. The transition just with me losing my sight, and then when I came out here, it was very difficult at first, and so just many difficult things to get through, but you work through each one, and yeah.
So I have a question for you. While teaching for quite a few years at Blind Incorporated, I watched students come and go, and I always remember once they leave through that door and go down the sidewalk and they go off into the world again, they've been at the training center for 6 to 9 months. And there they go. You just wonder what it's like, especially if they're going to go return to a small town where they don't have the transit system, where they don't have the grid system or the public transportation available to them. What was that like for you when you left Colorado?
It was very hard because you're used to having all those things available, and you feel the liberation and independence that you can have and feel you do have. And then going back to your home, but, a small city, and just having all of that independence just taken away is very difficult. And I think that's a big reason why I'm back out here now, just because, you miss it. And it's hard to go from having it to not having it all of a sudden.
Just like losing your sight.
Exactly. There's one of those changes you can avoid. By all means, avoid it.
And Denver has an excellent public transit system with the light rail, the buses.
Oh, yeah.
I'm jealous because I'm down here in Colorado Springs and ours isn't the best.
Yeah, it's amazing down here. Up here, whatever.
Well, likewise, in Minneapolis, we have 2 training centers, so we have probably a mile apart. There's always 30, 35, 40 students out there exploring, traveling, and doing stuff. So even the people of the city get acclimated to seeing people who are blind around.
Wow.
So, Emily, how soon after you've completed the program at the Colorado Center for the Blind did you decide to come back out for college?
So I completed the Center for the Blind in May. Then I went back home, and I had already applied at a couple different schools, and I had been looking at Metro just kind of as a possibility. And then I applied, I want to say early June, And so, I mean, it all then came together pretty quickly, because then once I got the acceptance, I thought, okay, well, then it's meant to be. And then, you call. I mean, I had been accepted and everything at Winthrop, and I already contacted them to put all my scholarships on hold for a year while I was at the Center for the Blind. Everything was all set up there and was on hold for the year that I was at the Center for the Blind, and I was basically just coming back. So it was just kind of surreal, because all the plans I'd made were in a good way, no more, but it's I had to call them and change it, but it was all great. And then I just organized things with the disability office at Metro, and Metro was a great experience.
And Jeff and I have talked a lot about, gosh, Jeff, it feels like forever ago on our very first episode. You remember we talked about the difference between getting accommodations in high school versus in college.
Oh, yeah. That's quite a difference, because you have a disability services office that you kind of got to get connected with, and then all your individual professors. You don't have a TVI anymore or a district teacher. You're kind of got to put this all into action yourself.
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree. That was a huge thing I noticed. And it's following up with professors, following up with different people, that's all on you. So I totally get what you're saying.
What tools did you use to keep all that organized? You're pretty new with Braille, and you probably were using JAWS, I imagine.
Yes.
So what were your go-to tools when you first started college?
Definitely, like you said, JAWS. Honestly, at first, I didn't use many tools at all, just because I was so new to everything. So it's I used a recorder. I used the peer note taker option they have. And then I did use, as my Braille got a little better and a little faster, I used the Braille note taker, the Braille Edge 40. And that has been great, especially as my Braille has improved. But those are really the main things for college that have been helpful. So, I mean, I'm definitely not super tech savvy, so I don't, half the stuff that's out there I don't even really know about, which is super sad. But try just as well, because I can't afford it anyway. So,
Oh, just keep listening to the Blind Abilities Network. You'll learn all kinds of new stuff. Shameless plug there. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sure I will learn way too much.
So college went overall pretty smooth for you, Emily?
It did. It certainly did. I mean, I'm sure I had some professors, I know I did, who handled my blindness better than others, but overall I certainly didn't have any major problems by any means. And overall, it was a very good experience. So it was good. It was very good.
And tell us, what was your major?
Communications.
So, Emily, I understand that you're working at an internship right now.
Yes, I'm super excited about it. I've been loving it. I've done it ever since this past September, so coming up on a year. And what I like is, because I'm an intern, I get all sorts of different work. I've had the opportunity to test some of their products for accessibility, and then I go through all of the different usability tests that they have, and I tell them what does and doesn't work for me being blind. Then I've gotten to do some coding using different JavaScript and HTML and CSS and just different things like that. So it's so cool, because it's such a variety of different things. I love it all. So it's been great.
Whoa, let's back up here, Emily. You were just saying that
I'm
you're
confused.
low tech. Low tech, and now she's coding and going into
JavaScript.
That's impressive.
I think it's really cool to do accessibility testing, because that you can see an immediate impact with what you're doing. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love it.
It is a great sense of being employed, even having an internship, and it's coming up on a year, but it's a good feeling to be being rewarded for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's cool. What I love is to be able to fix something and to see the result right then. I love that just, immediate effect, and just to be able to think, this is helping so many people like me be able to access the internet better and easier and more effectively. And I love thinking about it that way because it's a first-hand experience. So it's like, I obviously get how it helps people. And so it's just, I don't know, it's so cool.
So Emily, this is going to be a question that I start asking everyone that's kind of in the position that you're in as far as maybe fresh out of college or that sort of thing. And it's a cheesy question, so I apologize in advance. But Emily, what is your dream job?
So my dream job would be to be a motivational speaker, to go to different companies, schools, churches, sharing how I lost my vision, but more importantly, how I got through the difficulty of losing my vision, and just sharing hope in that, there's hope in whatever we go through. And whether what I'm doing now, the coding, testing, that's a part of that for a full-time job and just doing a lot of speaking on the side, I don't know. I'd be fine if that's the case. But the passion is in the speaking.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And you definitely have a talent for it.
Well, thank you so much.
So before we wrap up the interview, we have a question that we ask every single person that we've probably had on the podcast so far, because it's been so long,
It's not a math question.
No, we promise. There's no wrong answers. You don't even have to study for it. But a lot of our listeners are either young adults that are right exactly where you're at, maybe even coming out of high school or finishing up college.
And we also have listeners who are newly blind, like you were at one time.
Exactly. Or that are, looking at career changes because of the new blindness. The question that we have is, what advice do you have for somebody transitioning either out of high school or into a new career?
My advice, well, it's kind of multifold. First of all, it'd be don't limit yourself, because doing something like coding or testing a website, I never would have imagined myself doing. The only reason I'm doing it is because of the internship I was kind of pushed into when I was in college. I needed an internship just to get something on my resume. So I went to my advisor, and that was the only thing he could really think of that would be easy to get to on campus. And so I took it because I needed something. And that's when I fell in love with that kind of thing. So I think that's the biggest thing, just being open to trying something you maybe wouldn't have tried. And maybe it doesn't go perfect with your degree or whatever, but that's the big thing. And then kind of goes with that is also being open to people around you, your boss, your coworkers, the people you encounter. I think that just so helps form your work experience, and being able to view people in a more positive way just helps your work experience be more positive.
That is great advice.
Well, Emily, I just want to say the component of an internship, I think they work that into degrees, and it's kind of like volunteering. Sometimes you get to explore some areas that you're maybe interested or not, or just wanting to do it to stay busy, but you might find an interest. It's an opportunity. It's a safety net type of situation at first. Then you found a love for it, a passion for it, and you're making the best of it. So good for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
So, Emily, if any of our listeners would like to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. They can go to my website at www.brokencrayonsejz.com.
Perfect. Well, you all have just been listening to us interview Emily Zimmermann, and she doesn't know this yet, but she's probably going to make another appearance on our podcast in a few months so we can catch up with her and see where she's at. Because I think our listeners are going to fall in love with you. And I just love that you share your story and are so honest and upfront with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a true pleasure.
We really appreciate you, Emily, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Serina, that was a great guest. Emily was just awesome.
I can't wait to have her back.
Emily, that was a good find. That must have been a great convention.
Oh, it was fantastic. Like I said, when we were in the general session, you could have heard like a pin drop. Everybody was just captivated by what Emily was sharing with us. And I cannot tell her again how much I appreciate how open she was on this interview.
I know, you got to listening and you just start sinking in further and further into her story. And it's like you could really relate to it. And yet you wouldn't wish it upon anybody, yourself or anybody. 1 in a million.
Exactly. I'm going to have to check that book out because she did say her mom had a book called 1 in a Million. So I'm going to have to look that up.
A lot of the transitions from a mother's point of view. That must be interesting.
Exactly. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, Jeff, do you want to tell them where you can find us?
Yes, you can go to www.blindabilities.com, check out all the Job Insights podcast, and you can also find us on Twitter at Job Insights VIP.
And on Facebook under Job Insights. And we also have a wonderful support group called Job Insights Support Group.
And you can also send us email feedback at
jobinsights@blindabilities.com.
Great. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
And thank you, Chichow, for the beautiful music. And you can follow Chichow on Twitter at El Chichow. Chichow. And as always, we want to thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. And until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the realities of blind abilities.
The realities of blind abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.